Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, May 21st. And in our devotion for today, I want to continue with examining the importance of our mental health. We've been looking at the life of Elijah the last several days. And I want to summarize just all we've learned about Elijah so far, where we are at in the story. Elijah just kind of burst on the scene as a prophet of God, and he made a bold proclamation. Because of the sin of Israel, especially its leadership, its king and queen, there would be no rain until he said so, because God needed to get people's attention. He makes this proclamation and immediately goes into hiding. The king and queen are angry, and they spend 3 years looking to try and find Elijah so they could kill him or force him to make it rain again. After 3 years, Elijah reappears, and he's going to have a big confrontation. It's going to be a very public venue on Mount Carmel. The entire nation's going to gather, and on one side is going to be King Ahab and all 100 of the false prophets of Baal that are the people that are serving the king, versus just Elijah all by himself. They're going to have two ginormous 20 or 30-foot bonfires. And first, the false prophets of Baal, Elijah is going to ask them and say, hey, see if you can pray to your God, and he will just all of a sudden spontaneously light this bonfire. They are unable to do that. After a while, Elijah has his big, huge bonfire, and he has it doused with water. He says a simple prayer, and it goes up in flames. The people see the power of Israel, and that God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is real. And they turn, and even King Ahab for a moment turns and begins to worship God once again. This is very short-lived, of course, because as soon as Ahab goes home, he complains to his wife about what has happened, and she vows that she's really going to kill Elijah this time. We're going to pick up the story with what happens next, right after this big victory. It's been 3 years of hiding for Elijah. He has now come out into the public. God is with him. God is on his side. He has done this great thing. Many people have seen God through the actions of Elijah. Many people have repented and returned to God. This is a big moment for the prophet because he has just had his biggest victory that he's ever going to have in his life, probably. And so let's read the story about what happens next. This is the beginning of 1 Kings chapter 19. When Ahab got home, he told his wife Jezebel everything Elijah had done, including the way he had killed all the prophets of Baal. So Jezebel sent this message to Elijah. May the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you just as you have killed these prophets. Elijah was afraid and fled for his life. He went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. Then he went out alone into the wilderness, traveling all day into the desert. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. Then he lay down and slept under the tree. But as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, Get up and eat. He looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. Then the angel of the Lord came again, touched him, and said, Get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead will be too much for you. So he got up and he ate and drank, and the food gave him enough strength to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. Then he came to a cave where he spent the night. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So here we have this story. Elijah, this prophet, this man of God, has had his greatest victory. God has been with him. God has given him and delivered him this victory. Everybody's praising God. Everybody's saying, Elijah, you're this great guy. And immediately the queen wants to kill him. And Elijah is afraid. He runs away. He runs out into the Judean desert, this big rock wilderness area. It's incredibly hot there, not much water. He finds a very lone, small, solitary tree. He sits down beside it or underneath it, and he says, I want to die. So how does this happen? How do we go from a great victory to all of a sudden Elijah just giving up and wanting to die? What happened? You'd think he'd still be celebrating. You think he'd be gathering the friends. You think he'd be the toast of the town. Mental health is very much like this. Our struggles with depression, our struggles with our own self-identity, our struggles with understanding how valuable we are not always rational. Sometimes they just come upon us and they overwhelm us. Elijah is afraid. There is danger, and that danger is very real. But that danger isn't new. This isn't the first time. He's been living for many years with this threat of death from the powers that be. And God has continually provided in miraculous ways and protected Elijah in many miraculous ways. God has always been there for Elijah. But now all of a sudden, the fear is just too great. The danger is real. The feelings of fear are real, and they've overcome it. And it's more than Elijah can handle. So he goes off, he isolates himself, and then he chooses. He says, I just want to die. That's it. Elijah's ready to give up. You know, fear is not rational. It doesn't come at times when it's most convenient for us, and it doesn't come at times always when we expect it. Sometimes in the midst of great victories, we feel more alone than ever. Sometimes in the midst of our triumphs, when all of a sudden our gifts are being used and everybody's celebrating us, we feel more like frauds than we have ever done before. And sometimes that fear of the world around us, of something or someone in the world, can be so great. And it's not rational. It doesn't matter if it's new or if it's old, if it's, it doesn't matter to the extent that it's happening or not. The feelings are real. And the feelings and the reality of those feelings can overwhelm us. So what do? How do you survive? If getting great victories and being celebrated by other people isn't going to provide what you need in order to feel loved, to feel valued, what will? Well, the very first thing that we notice from this story is that Elijah isolated himself. And that is the worst thing that we can do. It's the most difficult thing. When we are alone and isolated, we are cut off from the helps, the truths, and the people that are going to help us get through these moments, because it is actually normal for us to struggle with our mental health and well-being, even when we are being celebrated, even when we are having great achievements, even in our greatest victories. It is normal to struggle because our mental health, if we have a mental illness, it doesn't go away just because we're having great success and achievements. So it's normal that this should happen to Elijah. It might not be rational, but it's normal. But the dangerous thing is not that he's struggling now. The dangerous thing is that he's isolated himself. And isolating ourselves is what we do all the time because we're embarrassed. We're ashamed. We think, oh, I've got these great victories. I've got these great achievements. I've done these wonderful things. I shouldn't be struggling with this stuff. But the reality is that we do struggle. And struggling with our mental health is normal. And we shouldn't feel ashamed, but we do. And so we isolate ourselves. And that's probably the single biggest thing that Elijah does that is going to lead him to danger, is that he's isolating himself. We have seen this over and over in each of our texts that we've been looking at about our mental health. Isolation is the biggest thing we should be worried about. Cutting ourselves off from trusted companions, from professional help, from resources and helps that we need. That is what's so important. We can't cut ourselves off because on our own, this is way too difficult journey. We need other people. We need to be vulnerable and open and honest with others about our struggles, because other people, both our trusted companions and the professional help, those are the people that have so much to offer us that we need. And so we have to be careful about the actions, the habits that we have, the choices that we make, always asking ourselves the question, is this choice, is this thought, is this habit that I'm doing isolating myself from trusted companions and help and resources, or is it building bridges for me? Because if it's isolating or building walls, then it's not a good thing. But if it's building bridges and it's deepening my connections to trusted companions and resources and help, then it is a good thing. No matter what it is, even if it seems crazy or looks crazy, it's a good thing if it's strengthening those connections, building bridges to trusted companions and those who help. So that's one of the biggest questions we ask. Is this habit, is this action, is this thought, this decision building barriers, furthering, isolating myself, or is it strengthening my connections to the helps and resources I need? The next thing, and this is the thing we see over and over again, even though Elijah has gone into the desert, even though he's had a great victory, even though he's showing doubts that God's not going to be there to help me this time, even though he's voicing those doubts and those accusations against God after God gave him this great victory, even though he's being a little ungrateful, Even in the midst of this darkest moment where he's isolated himself and he's gone in the desert to die, God has not abandoned Elijah. God has not said to Elijah, "Ha, you're not showing enough faith. I'm done with you." God never says that. That God goes into the dark moments with Elijah. Again, we see this. We see this over and over and over again in the story of scriptures. God is there. God is right next to Elijah. No matter what Elijah chooses, whether or not God provides miraculous help and food and water, and no matter what Elijah chooses, does Elijah choose to get up and eat and do what God says, go to the place where he'll find help? No matter what Elijah chooses in that moment, God is still going to be there, and God's still going to love Elijah. Amen. Amen. It is Thursday. Just wanted to remind you, this Saturday we have our drive to collect things to help out Mosaic, Carpenter's Place, and a local food pantry. See our web page and see our Facebook page for a list of all the items that we're collecting. 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. we're collecting them on the southwest entrance of our building, the Academy School entrance. That's where the collection is happening. You drive up your car. We will take the stuff out of your car for you. Those are some great organizations that need our help. So remember to take part in that if you can. Also, one second. We have these wonderful yard signs. We want to put these yard signs up in your house. Yard signs up in your house. So please call the church, contact us, let us know. We'll arrange to have it put up in your house. We'd love to bring it by, put up in your house. It helps the community let us know. It helps us to let the community know that we're still here. So if you're willing, please take part in doing that. Call the church, contact the church, email the church, and we will get those put up in your yard for you. This Sunday, we have worship at 9 a.m. live on Facebook. Please join us. We'll be joined by Reverend Lucy Weinert, my wife, from St. Paul Lutheran Church. She'll be joining us for that worship service, as well as all the folks from St. Paul. In the meantime, take care and look in on those who are most vulnerable. Amen.